One night with a stranger. Then the black storekeeper learns he's a Mafia boss. Jasmine freezes behind the bulletproof partition of her South Philadelphia corner store as a black SUV rolls to a stop outside. It's barely 8 p.m. Her locks are pulled into a messy bun, her faded Temple University hoodie hanging loose on her shoulders, and her tired brown eyes tighten when four men in dark suits step out. Then he appears. The man from last night. The man she let close enough to touch parts of her she normally guards with her life. He walks in wearing a tailored black wool coat, dark hair slicked back, a sharp jawline, and a thin scar slicing through his left eyebrow. His presence fills the small shop. His men stay near the door, watching everything. Through the scratched partition, their eyes meet. Heat. Recognition. Fear. And then the truth hits her with full force. The man who whispered promises in my ear 12 hours ago just walked into my store with armed guards, and the way his men lower their heads tells me everything. I didn't just spend the night with a stranger. I stepped into the life of someone dangerous. Her hands shake as he approaches alone. He leans forward and says 4 words. We need to talk. What would you do if you discovered the person you just spent the night with controls the criminal underworld of your city? Tell us where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you want more stories filled with heat, danger, and choices that change everything. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Let's begin. 24 hours before that SUV stopped outside her store, Jasmine was already running on fumes. Riverside Corner Store sat wedged between an overpriced dog grooming boutique and a new coffee shop where lattes cost more than her electric bill. From the outside, the store looked tired, scuffed brick, peeling paint, and an old metal door that stuck every time someone pulled it open. Inside, the bulletproof partition separated her from customers, and the flickering bulbs overhead buzzed like angry insects. She kept meaning to replace the lights, but every dollar had somewhere else to go. She unlocked the door at 6 a.m., same as every day. The morning air clung to her hoodie as she rolled up the metal gate. 32 years old and already feeling twice that. Not the kind of tired that goes away with sleep. The kind that settles deep in your bones when life keeps asking for more than you have to give. She tied her locks back into a messy bun and tried not to think about how long it had been since she'd done anything for herself. No hair appointment. No night out. No break. Her brother, Marcus, was supposed to be running the store with her. Instead, he was serving 3 to 5 years at Greaterford. A sentence handed down for a robbery everyone in the neighborhood knew he didn't commit. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong skin color. Jasmine had inherited the store in every way that mattered, even though Marcus technically still owned half. She visited him as often as she could, bringing news from home, keeping him hopeful. But every time she walked out of that prison, the weight on her chest grew heavier. By noon, she'd already counted the register twice. $46 the first time. $61 the second. She sighed and pushed the drawer closed. She was 3 months behind on rent, and the landlord's nephew, Tommy DeVecchio, reminded her of it constantly. He came by every few weeks, leaning on the counter like the store belonged to him, tapping his fingers on the partition in a way that made her skin crawl. He called it protection money. She called it extortion. South Philly had been changing fast. Too fast. Murals about community pride covered brick walls while luxury condos sprang up just a few blocks away. New restaurants. New faces. Old neighbors disappearing one by one as rents crept higher. Jasmine watched them go and wondered how long until she'd be next. She loved this place. Loved the regulars who still stopped in for scratch-off tickets and bags of chips. Loved the memory of Marcus laughing behind the counter. But love didn't pay bills. By late afternoon, she was holding on by a thread. A woman argued loudly over the price of cigarettes. A teenager tried to pocket a candy bar while pretending to browse. A delivery truck blocked her entrance for half an hour and refused to move. Every tiny frustration chipped away at her patience. But the sound that broke her completely came at 4:37 p.m. The door opened. Tommy walked in. He wore that smug half-smile Jasmine hated, a look that said he enjoyed being the person people feared. He slid a piece of paper against the partition. $3,000, he said. By Monday. Her stomach dropped. Tommy, I don't have. Not my problem. He leaned in closer. My uncle wants tenants who can keep up. If you can't, someone else will. Her hands stayed beneath the counter, holding the knife she kept hidden. Not to use. Just to feel in control. He straightened his jacket, gave one last glance around the store, and walked out. The moment the door shut behind him, Jasmine finally exhaled. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. $3,000 by Monday. She didn't have half that. She didn't even have a quarter of it. Rent. Utilities. Inventory payments. The store was drowning, and she was going down with it. She closed the store early. Or tried to. She locked the door, pulled the metal gate halfway down, and rested her forehead against the cool glass. She thought about calling Marcus, then stopped. He didn't need more stress. He always asked her how the store was doing, and she always lied. We're good, she'd say. Everything's fine. She couldn't keep that lie going much longer. The register held a pathetic $243. She placed the bills in her palm and stared at them as if they might multiply. For months ago, she'd sold her grandmother's gold hoops just to stay afloat. They were the last valuable thing she owned. Every time she thought about it, her chest tightened. At 11:30 p.m., she started shutting things down. Sweeping the floor. Turning off the drink cooler light. Checking locks. Anything to keep her mind from replaying Tommy's warning. She was about to turn the sign to closed at 11:47 p.m. when the door chimed. Her heart skipped. The gate was only halfway up. Nobody should have been able to get in, yet someone had. Someone tall. Someone broad-shouldered. Someone whose presence filled the doorway like a shadow. Jasmine straightened slowly, her pulse thudding in her ears. That was the moment everything shifted. That was the moment he walked in. Tall, dark, and dangerous in a way that should have sent her running. He stood just inside the doorway, tall enough that he had to duck slightly under the half-raised gate. 6'2", maybe a little more. Broad shoulders under a black wool coat that looked custom-tailored. Dark hair brushed back without a strand out of place. Espresso-colored eyes that held focus like a man used to being obeyed. The scar through his left eyebrow drew attention immediately, thin but unmistakable. A reminder that his life had touched danger more than once. The coat alone was worth more than Jasmine's quarterly rent. It didn't belong in her struggling corner store any more than he did. He moved with a quiet certainty that didn't shout for attention, yet somehow demanded it. Confidence like that didn't come from gym hours or fashion choices. It came from power. Real power. She tightened her grip on the counter. We're closing. He lifted an eyebrow. I just need cigarettes. They're still closing, she replied, nodding toward the sign she hadn't flipped yet. A slow hint of amusement crossed his face. You always this hospitable? You always shop in bulletproof stores wearing a coat worth more than my whole inventory? His smile deepened, small but intentional. He stepped closer to the partition, studying her through the scratched plastic. It wasn't a creepy stare. It was something else. Curiosity. As if he were trying to figure out how someone like her survived in a place like this. You own the store? He asked. Why? You planning to buy it? He shook his head. You look tired. Not physically. Tired in a way that doesn't go away with rest. She hated how accurate that was. He didn't look away as he slid cash under the small metal tray. She handed him the cigarettes, her fingers brushing the top of his hand through the slot. Warm skin. Calloused knuckles. A reminder that he wasn't just some well-dressed man strolling through the wrong neighborhood for fun. He took a slow breath. You look like you could use a drink. Her heart thudded. Strangers didn't usually talk to her like this. Especially not strangers who looked like him. Tall. Controlled. Confident in a way that made her acutely aware of the distance between them. Every instinct told her to decline. She had enough problems. Tommy, the rent, the store collapsing under her feet. The last thing she needed was some wealthy stranger with mystery written all over him. "I'm closing up," she said, trying to convince herself as much as him. He didn't push. He just said quietly, "I don't know you. You don't know me. Let's keep it that way." Something in her chest loosened. No expectations. No promises. No pretending. Just a moment outside her reality. For the first time in months, the idea of doing something reckless didn't feel dangerous. It felt like breathing. She surprised herself when she said, "One drink." He held the door for her as she locked up. They walked side by side without speaking, the cold night air cutting through her hoodie. She kept glancing at him, trying to place him, trying to understand why he walked like someone accustomed to being followed. They stopped in front of a narrow doorway between 4th and Bainbridge. No sign. Just a dim light and a door that looked older than both of them. He pushed it open with a nod from the bartender inside. The man behind the counter looked at him like they'd crossed paths many times, respectful but cautious. That alone made Jasmine sit up straighter. The bar smelled like old wood, bourbon, and something smoky drifting from the back. Low lights, dark furniture, and quiet music. A place for people with secrets. A place where conversations didn't leave with the guests. They sat in a small booth. He ordered bourbon for both of them, and she didn't correct him. The first sip warmed her instantly, loosening the tension in her shoulders. The second sip made her brave enough to speak. "My brother's in prison," she said, no idea why she revealed that to him. "He didn't do what they say. But that doesn't matter in this city." He listened without interrupting. Not judging. Not offering pity. Just listening in a way that made her feel seen. "Family will trap you faster than anything," he murmured. "You want to help them. You want to save them. You give everything you have. Sometimes everything isn't enough." She looked at him more closely, searching his expression. "Sounds like you know from experience." He didn't answer. His eyes shifted away for the briefest moment, enough to confirm she'd hit something real. The chemistry built slowly, not rushed. Bourbon softened her edges. His carefully controlled presence drew her in. Not just the way he looked, but the way he stayed quiet until his words mattered. She felt herself leaning toward him without meaning to. They left around 2 a.m. Philadelphia was quiet at that hour, but quiet didn't mean safe. He walked beside her like he was guarding her space without taking it over. She kept glancing at him, wondering why she felt bold when she should have felt cautious. "I'm not looking for anything," she said abruptly. "Neither am I," he replied. That was all it took. Their kiss was nothing gentle. It tasted like two people making a bad choice for the right reasons. Like heat and frustration and the relief of letting something else take over for once. By the time they reached her apartment, 3 blocks from the store, they were already past the point of thinking. She pulled him upstairs without hesitation. When she woke at 6 a.m., he was gone. Just a note on the pillow. "You're stronger than you think. V." Jasmine found the note tucked under her pillow before she even opened her eyes. A single sentence in sharp handwriting. No explanation. No number. Just a quiet push back into reality. She crumpled it first, hard, until the paper softened under her grip. Then she tossed it into the trash and told herself this was perfect. Clean. Simple. Exactly what she'd wanted. A one-time escape with no strings to choke her later. But the lie didn't hold long. By 5:45 a.m. she was unlocking the store, the early humidity sticking to her neck. The morning rush swept in like they always did, construction workers grabbing black coffee, nurses from Pennsylvania hospital trading graveyard shift exhaustion for caffeine. She worked automatically, scanning items, handing back change, keeping her smile steady. All while fighting the memory of last night, the warmth of his breath when he'd leaned in, the weight of his attention, the rare feeling of being seen instead of stepped over. She pushed it down. She had bigger problems. The bills on her counter looked like a losing argument. Tommy's deadline sat on her shoulders like a steel plate. The numbers didn't add up. Not yesterday, not today, not ever. At noon, the door chimed. Tommy walked in like he owned the air. Same cheap leather jacket, same gum between his teeth. He leaned close to the partition, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel personal. "You got till Monday. $3,000, he said. Or we find someone who understands how things work." She met his gaze without flinching. "I've been in trouble. This is just Tuesday." He smirked, tapped the glass, and left. Only when he was gone did her hands shake badly enough that she had to sit down. The moment Tommy stepped out, the store felt colder. Jasmine pressed her palms to her knees, willing her pulse to steady. $3,000. She barely had $300 after rent, utilities, and stocking the shelves. The numbers felt like a trap she couldn't slip out of. Options flickered through her mind, each one worse than the last. Sell the store? Nobody would buy it fast enough. Ask for help? There was no one left to ask. Run? She'd done enough of that in her life, and trouble always managed to keep pace. The weekend dragged by in a haze of too much coffee and too little sleep. She worked, she paced her small apartment, she stared at the ceiling. Every time her heart kicked too hard, her thoughts drifted back to the stranger, V. She wondered who he really was. Probably some high-earning night owl with a penthouse view and a sleek calendar full of appointments. Maybe married. Definitely someone who'd brushed her from his memory the moment he walked out her door. By Sunday night, her chest felt tight enough to split. Monday hovered like a deadline she couldn't postpone. She opened the store that morning with the same brittle determination she used for everything else. She kept the register organized. Swept the same tile floor twice. Counted the minutes. Tommy would show up. He always did. Hours crawled. Noon passed. Evening crept in, stretching toward closing time. At 8 p.m. she flipped the sign to closed. She was about to lock the door when headlights washed across the storefront. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the curb, its engine humming low. 4 men stepped out first. Then she saw him. Her stranger from that single wild night. Except here, with men positioned around him like a wall, he didn't look like someone drifting through the city. He looked like someone the city made room for. Their eyes locked through the partition, and everything she had brushed aside slammed into place. The coat, the quiet authority, the bartender who'd nodded at him like they shared history. The door clicked as he pushed it open. He didn't bring the men with him. They stayed outside, positioned with an alert stillness that belonged to people who followed orders without hesitation. Inside, it was just him. The same man who had sat across from her at the bar with easy confidence. The same man who'd kissed her like it was the only honest decision either of them had made in a long time. But now he felt larger. Not because he changed, but because everything around him shifted to acknowledge who he was. He stepped toward the counter, unhurried, the black coat hanging open just enough for her to see the glint of a watch worth more than her rent. His shoulders filled the space, his presence settling into the room with quiet certainty. "Jasmine," he said. Her name sounded different coming from him. Calm, steady, as if he had every right to use it. She swallowed, her fingers tightening around the edge of the register. "So you found my store." "I already knew where it was." His gaze held hers, not pressing, not soft, just clear. "I didn't know I'd need to come back." A chill worked its way down her spine. "Why are you here?" He glanced toward the trash bin, toward the faint glimpse of the note she'd thrown away earlier, then back to her. "Because someone paid you a visit." Her breath caught. "You know about Tommy?" "I know more than his name." His voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. Men like him survive by choosing targets who won't push back. He miscalculated. Jasmine's heart thudded so loudly she felt it in her throat. What are you planning to do? He stepped closer, stopping just short of the counter. Before I answer that, you should know who I am. The air tightened between them. My name is Vincenzo Calderone. The floor might as well have moved under her feet. The bulletproof partition rattled slightly as he stepped closer, alone this time. He didn't bring the men with him. Those shadows stayed outside. He looked different now. Not the stranger from the night before, not the man she thought she'd known, but someone whose presence demanded acknowledgement. We need to talk, he said, voice low and controlled. Jasmine's hands gripped the edge of the counter. Who the hell are you? He met her gaze evenly. My name is Vincenzo Salvatore, and I need you to listen very carefully. The name hit her like a shock. Salvatore. One of the most powerful families in Philadelphia. They controlled the Italian market, the port contracts, the construction lines, everything that mattered in the city's underworld. Her knees nearly buckled. Oh my God. Last night you knew. You knew who I was. He shook his head, dark eyes steady. No. Last night was an accident. I didn't know about your store, your situation, any of it. I found out this morning. Found out what? She demanded, voice trembling between fear and anger. That Tommy DeVecchio has been running an unauthorized protection racket in my territory, targeting you specifically. Jasmine's mouth fell open. So, you're here to shake me down yourself? Cut out the middleman. His jaw tightened. No. I'm here to tell you Tommy won't be bothering you anymore. She crossed her arms, confusion mixing with disbelief. Why would you do that? Because what happened last night, that was real. And I don't like people messing with what's mine, he said, intensity simmering beneath the calm. I'm not yours. I'm not anybody's, she said firmly. I know. That's what I like about you. His words carried a weight she couldn't ignore. He reached into his coat pocket and left an envelope on the counter. Insurance payment from Tommy. Not charity. She slid it back toward him. I don't want your charity. I don't want to be your territory. He didn't flinch. You're going to make this difficult, aren't you? Of course I am, she said. He nodded slowly, almost approvingly. Fair enough. But I'm not going anywhere, Jasmine. The way he said her name, it was intimate, possessive, deliberate. It left a shiver down her spine. When he left, the tension didn't ease. Something had shifted. She knew this wasn't over. The store felt smaller after he left, the air heavier with his absence. Jasmine rested her hands on the counter, trying to steady the tremor in her fingers. The envelope sat between them like a reminder of power she didn't want to owe. She didn't take it. She couldn't. Outside, the city hummed quietly, unaware of the tension that had filled her corner store. Her mind raced, trying to separate what had happened last night from the man standing outside her store today. He wasn't just a stranger. He wasn't just dangerous. He was authority made human, and somehow, that terrified her more than any threat she had faced before. She remembered the way he had looked at her last night, the clarity in his eyes, the restraint. It was different from any attention she had ever received. He hadn't claimed her. He hadn't tried to own her. And yet, now, he had the power to remove threats, to bend circumstances to his will. Her gaze drifted to the empty street. The black SUV was gone, the men dispersed. Still, she could feel the weight of their presence, the invisible perimeter that now surrounded her life. She hated that she felt safer, hated that the thought of him leaving filled her with unease. Jasmine pressed her palms against the counter. She wasn't used to feeling like a pawn in anyone's game. She wasn't used to needing someone, not in this way. And yet, she understood that last night had not been only desire, it had been a window into a life she had no place in, and yet could not completely ignore. The envelope remained on the counter, a silent negotiation. Taking it meant accepting him, in some form, even if she refused to say it aloud. Sliding it back had been her assertion of independence, but independence now felt fragile, delicate, almost laughable in the shadow of the Salvatore name. She exhaled slowly, leaning back. Her world had tilted on its axis, shifted by a few hours, a few words, and a name. Vincenzo Salvatore, unknown stranger, irresistible danger, her unexpected intersection with a life she had no business entering. The thought lingered, persistent and unrelenting. Boundaries could be drawn, but he had already crossed the most important ones without asking permission. And as she prepared to leave the store for the night, she realized that nothing would ever be the same. Not her routine, not her sense of control, and certainly not her nights of solitude. Something had begun, unstoppable, and she could only wait to see how it would unfold. 2 weeks passed since Vincenzo's visit. Jasmine moved through her store with an efficiency born of routine, but each step carried an unspoken tension. She maintained her distance, keeping conversations strictly about deliveries and inventory. His presence hovered on the edges of her awareness. She noticed his SUV parked across the street at closing time, the engine silent, the tinted windows reflecting the streetlights. She didn't look at him directly, but the sense of being watched wasn't comforting, it was undeniable. Food deliveries began arriving from Villa di Roma on 9th Street. Not a note, not a word, just boxes of fresh bread, pasta, and sauces. Her electricity bills stopped coming with angry calls. Rent notices vanished. Distributors who had demanded unfair prices now offered standard rates. Each gesture reminded her that he was quietly influencing her life. She hated needing it, resented it, and yet refused to admit she was grateful. It was Tuesday night. Jasmine stayed late, counting inventory in the cramped backroom. The store smelled of cold metal and the faint residue of bleach from her morning cleaning. She noted each item meticulously, keeping her mind focused on numbers. Then she caught the smell. Gasoline. Acrid, sharp, unmistakable. Her heart thumped as she ran toward the front of the store. Through the side window, flames licked the walls, climbing faster than she could comprehend. The Molotov cocktail had bypassed the partition entirely, a direct assault. Smoke thickened, stinging her lungs. She coughed, gasping for air, stumbling toward the door. It wouldn't budge. Jammed, blocked, barricaded, her escape denied. Panic surged, primal and urgent. She could feel the heat before it touched her skin. She was trapped. Then the door slammed open with force. Strong hands grabbed her arms, pulling her into the night. She fell onto the sidewalk, coughing violently, her chest heaving. Familiar faces surrounded her, men from the night Vincenzo had first appeared at her store. Protective, efficient, commanding, they moved with precision, their presence both shocking and reassuring. Vincenzo knelt beside her, hands cupping her face, his dark eyes scanning her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Jasmine, look at me. Are you hurt?" His voice carried urgency but no accusation. The chaos of the fire behind them seemed to fold away in the intensity of his focus. She could only shake her head, unable to speak through the smoke and fear. The flames consumed everything. The store, her brother's investment, the space that had been her life. Fire trucks arrived, lights flashing, neighbors shouting, but she felt only numbness. Her gaze was fixed on Vincenzo, his presence grounding her in a world that had just erupted into chaos. "This wasn't random," he said, his voice low, a tension in the set of his jaw. "This was a message." Jasmine, wrapped in a heavy coat from the back of the SUV, asked, "A message to who?" His eyes darkened. "To me. They used you to get to me." The vulnerability in his confession cut through her anger. He was exposing a fear, not weakness but accountability. "Who?" She pressed, voice trembling. "The Castellanos," he said. "They are a rival family making a move. They saw us together. Your night, our intersection. It put you in their sights." The weight of it struck her. One night had transformed her from a struggling storekeeper to a target in a war she didn't understand. "You'll stay at one of my properties," he stated, firm and absolute. She started to protest. "I don't." "Jasmine." They targeted you to get to me. That makes you my responsibility, he interrupted. Fear edged his features now, a rare transparency. I didn't ask for this, she whispered, voice tight with resistance. Neither did I. But here we are, he said, his hand brushing hers in a fleeting, protective gesture. They moved to the SUV, the night air cool against the heat still radiating from the burning building. Jasmine watched as the flames consumed the last traces of her independence, her brother's legacy, and a piece of herself she had held onto stubbornly. The property he offered was not a prison, though it felt like one. A loft in northern liberties, spacious, exposed brick, expansive windows, but it carried the weight of protection and control. It was the most beautiful cage she had ever entered. Inside, the loft smelled faintly of cedar and polished concrete. The city lights stretched across the skyline, distant and unyielding. Jasmine realized that boundaries were fragile, even when drawn deliberately. Protection had arrived, not gently, not quietly, but with a force that erased her autonomy in exchange for survival. Vincenzo remained near the entrance, watching, waiting, acknowledging her space even as he asserted authority. She felt a complicated mixture of relief and defiance, anger and gratitude. She didn't want to owe anyone, yet she could not ignore that the danger had not disappeared, it had only shifted. The night ended not with calm, but with an uneasy truce. Jasmine understood that surviving meant accepting certain realities, that boundaries could be respected only so far. And for the first time since Vincenzo had entered her life, she wondered what it would take to reclaim her agency, if she even could, in a world where he existed, ever-present, ever-watching, and undeniably dangerous. The loft was a statement, both in its beauty and its weight. Exposed brick walls framed floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panorama of Philadelphia's skyline that stretched from the Comcast Towers to the distant arches of the Ben Franklin Bridge. Expensive furniture filled the open space, each piece carefully chosen, art she didn't recognize hanging with deliberate placement. Every detail screamed wealth and taste, and yet the space felt suffocating, as though the luxury itself was a kind of confinement. Vincenzo didn't stay there permanently. He had other residences, others' responsibilities, but he visited daily. At first, Jasmine resented it. Each knock at the door, each polite entrance made her pulse quicken with irritation. He brought updates, notes on the investigation into the fire, the Castellanos' latest movements, and the estimated timeline before the danger subsided. She listened carefully, her skepticism barely concealed. One evening, after a long silence over dinner, she asked the question she had been avoiding. How many people have you killed? Directly? 3. Indirectly? I stopped counting, he said evenly, without emotion, without hesitation. The admission should have repelled her. It should have made her flee. Instead, it struck her with an odd sort of respect. He didn't lie. He didn't soften reality to make her feel safe. He met her curiosity with honesty. Why are you telling me this? She pressed. Because you asked. And because I won't build anything with you on lies, he replied. Their forced proximity became a pattern. He brought dinner from the best restaurants, often Termini Brothers for dessert. They ate in silence sometimes, in cautious conversation at other times. She learned fragments of his world, the Salvatore family's hierarchy, his father's ironclad control, uncle's managing operations in Atlantic City. Vincenzo was born into this life, baptized into its power, bound before he could choose. 3 weeks in, as twilight painted the skyline orange and purple, she asked, "Did you ever want out?" "Every day until I was 18. Then I realized wanting out and getting out are different things." "Why?" "Because leaving means everyone you love becomes a target. Family is leverage. Love is weakness." She didn't flinch, though the irony wasn't lost. "Like I'm leverage now." "Yes. But you didn't choose this. I did." Layer by layer, she began to see him. Not just Vincenzo, heir to the Salvatore family, but Vincent, the man beneath. The one who read philosophy books, who knew every street of Philadelphia, who quietly checked on his cousin's kids' soccer games. He was paradoxical, danger and routine, violence and precision, authority and unexpected gentleness. The first time she laughed at one of his stories, something shifted. He had brought cannoli from Termini Brothers and recounted how his nonno had taught him to eat them properly, the crust first, then the filling, and never both at the same time. Her laugh was abrupt, genuine, and it caught both of them off guard. He stood abruptly, glancing at the clock. "I should go," he said. "Why?" "Because you laughed, and now I want to stay. You're not ready for what happens if I do." His restraint was deliberate, protective. He didn't linger because he could. He left because he respected her boundaries, even as his desire made it hard to do so. After he left, Jasmine lingered at the windows. The city sprawled below, alive and indifferent. She traced the lights, noting the bridges, the streets she had walked countless times, now reframed by the height and quiet of this apartment. Survival had a new meaning here. She wasn't falling for him because he rescued her. She was falling despite it, because he respected the space between them. Days blended into weeks. Vincenzo's visits, initially a source of tension, became the pulse of her new life. She asked difficult questions, and he answered honestly, never softening the edges of who he was. She came to understand the weight of his choices, the life he had inherited and could not escape. At the same time, she recognized the parts of him that were simply human: humor, care, observation, even vulnerability in fleeting moments. Their conversations were layered, at times strategic, at times personal. He told her about the Salvatore operations without embellishment, about the leverage they held and the families who opposed them. Yet, tucked into those disclosures were moments that revealed his personality: the quiet patience with neighbors, the small gestures for friends and family, the attentiveness to details most people ignored. On a Thursday evening, he brought a small plate of cannoli, setting it carefully on the table between them. "Nonno would be disappointed if I didn't show you how to eat these properly," he said with a dry smile. She laughed again, a richer, freer sound this time, and he allowed himself a rare smile in return. The loft's walls, the city lights beyond, the soft hum of life below, it all became a shared space, a bubble of fragile normalcy in an otherwise violent world. Evenings like this left her conflicted. Every laugh, every shared story, made her feel tethered to him in ways she could neither control nor fully comprehend. She reminded herself that she was surviving, making strategic decisions, maintaining her boundaries. Yet, as she gazed at the city from the loft windows after he left, she couldn't deny the truth: she was falling. Not because he had rescued her, not because she owed him anything, but because he had shown her a rare form of respect, a recognition of her strength even as he guarded her from dangers she could not always see. The loft, with all its beauty and weight, became both refuge and cage. She understood the difference between safety provided and safety chosen. She was not naive, she knew the risks. Yet the knowledge of those risks didn't stop her heart from beating faster at his presence, didn't erase the tension that lingered whenever he entered or departed. By the end of the third week, she was no longer merely enduring the situation. She was negotiating it, probing it, understanding it on her terms. The boundaries she had set remained, but the edges had softened. She could laugh, she could question, she could observe and evaluate without immediate fear. Each visit became a test of self-awareness, a measure of how much she could accept without surrendering entirely. Falling in love was a dangerous calculus here, one she refused to simplify. She reminded herself nightly that she was not naive, that every choice carried consequence. She kept track of her reactions, monitored her own heart, and held firm in the knowledge that while he could protect her from external threats, she alone governed the boundaries of her emotions. Even as she admitted, reluctantly, that she felt a connection, she knew it was a choice. Not survival. Not obligation. Not gratitude. A choice. Falling despite reason, falling because of recognition, falling because of the respect he had shown in every interaction, in every restraint, in every carefully measured word. The city beyond the loft glimmered with indifferent light, unaware of the storms that had swept through Jasmine's life. And yet, inside, a different reckoning was unfolding. Boundaries were being tested, trust cautiously offered, and the slow, deliberate emergence of intimacy reshaping what had been a simple transaction of survival into something infinitely more complicated. Week 4 in the loft arrived with a different rhythm. Vincenzo came not with guards or updates about threats, but with papers spread across the coffee table. His tailored coat hung on the back of the chair, his dark hair slightly mussed, eyes sharp yet calm. "The insurance payout from your store," he said. "I had my accountant draw up investment options." 5A3. Jasmine's brows lifted as he slid sheets toward her. Real estate opportunities, potential business partnerships, even stock portfolios, each one clearly designed to empower her independently. "None of these tie you to me legally," he added. "Your money, your choice." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "You're helping me leave. I'm helping you stand. What you do after that is your choice." It wasn't possession. It wasn't control. It was something far rarer, trust without strings. Later that night, for the first time, she asked him to stay, not for protection, but for company. They sat on the couch, his arm resting lightly on her shoulders. The city lights spilled through the loft windows, shimmering against the polished floors. "This won't be easy," she admitted quietly. "What won't?" "This. Us. Whatever this is becoming." He tightened his hold subtly, not pressing, just present. "I know." Her voice was trembling with honesty. "Your world, I don't understand it. The violence, the compromises, the things you have to do. I'm not asking you to understand it. I'm not even asking you to accept it. Just to see me anyway." She turned to look at him fully. "I do see you. That's the problem." "Why is that a problem?" "Because I see the man who checks on kids' soccer games and reads Machiavelli. I see the guy who respects my no, even when it costs him. And I'm terrified that seeing you means choosing you." His thumb brushed her cheek. "What if I'm just as terrified?" "Of what?" "That you'll choose me and regret it. That my world will destroy what I love about you. That I'll become another trap you can't escape." The vulnerability in that admission stripped her defenses clean. She leaned forward, pressing her lips to his. Not like that first night of reckless escape, but with intention, with awareness, with choice. When they moved to the bedroom, it was slower, weighted with meaning. Each touch, each glance, carried a deliberation absent in the chaos of their first night. Afterwards, lying in his arms, she whispered, "What happens now?" "Now we figure it out. Day by day." Her voice was barely audible. "The Castellanos. They are being handled. My father is involved. You'll be safe. And us." He propped himself on an elbow, gazing down at her with steady eyes. "What do you want us to be?" "I don't know. I just know I'm tired of pushing you away." "Then don't. Let me in, Jasmine. Not as your savior or your protector. Just as someone who wants to be here." The simplicity of it, the absence of heroics or grand gestures, felt like gravity. It pulled them together in a way that was organic, grounded, and unafraid of the complexities outside the loft. Over the following weeks, they built something fragile and fierce. She took the insurance payout and invested in a new store location in Fishtown. Vincenzo's name was nowhere on the paperwork, but his influence was implicit, protective, like a shield she didn't need to acknowledge. She didn't step into his world beyond the loft, refused formal introductions to his family, and kept a careful distance from the Salvatore business. He never demanded otherwise. They existed in a liminal space between their worlds, hers, defined by independence and recovery, and his, defined by power and inheritance. Her friends noticed the change in her. She moved differently, carried less of the weight that had once defined her exhaustion, yet carried an aura of mystery they couldn't name. She said less, laughed more, and finally stopped apologizing for her choices. The loft, once a cage, had transformed into a sanctuary of deliberate intimacy, a place where choice mattered above all else. Each night, as the city lights stretched toward the horizon, she felt grounded. She wasn't saved, she wasn't owned. She was present in every sense, making decisions with her eyes wide open. One evening, Vincenzo brought a bottle of aged bourbon, and they sat on the couch, shoulders touching lightly, silent for the first long while. He poured 2 glasses, then placed one in her hand. The city outside glittered, indifferent and vast. "You're lighter," he observed quietly. "I feel lighter," she admitted. "I can breathe again." "I can," she trailed off, searching for the word, "be me again." He nodded, studying her. "I've never wanted anything but this, whatever it is we're building, to be real for you, on your terms." She met his gaze, and for a long moment, they didn't speak. No threats, no barriers, just presence. Her fingers traced the rim of the glass, grounding herself in the quiet, intentional intimacy of this moment. Weeks passed in this rhythm. She expanded the store, staffed it carefully, and kept herself tethered to the life she had fought to preserve. Vincenzo's visits became steady but unobtrusive. He celebrated milestones quietly: her first profitable week, her first vendor deal negotiated on her own, her decision to hire a part-time manager to alleviate her burden. Every gesture underscored a subtle message: she was capable, and he recognized it. Their interactions shifted further, moving from caution and curiosity to something unspoken yet evident. Shared laughter over trivial things, lingering touches that didn't demand anything beyond acknowledgement, and conversations that wandered from serious to playful with ease. Each moment reinforced that the connection wasn't built on danger or need, but on recognition of each other's humanity. Her friends speculated on her change. "You're glowing," one said. "You're happy." She smiled without replying, knowing no one could fully explain the person who had entered her life, who brought both danger and steadiness, who challenged her independence while respecting it in equal measure. Loving Vincenzo was inexplicable. Loving him demanded trust and courage, and she had chosen both deliberately. 6 months after the fire, Jasmine stood on the threshold of her new store. She inhaled the scent of fresh paint, the faint trace of wood polish, the hum of her city waking up around her. Across the street, he stood, dark coat tailored, eyes sharp, hands folded casually, watching. Not guarding, not instructing, just observing. Presence without imposition. She smiled. This time, she did not feel trapped. She had chosen her path. She had chosen him. And for the first time in months, she felt entirely free. Riverside Corner Store 2.0 opened in Fishtown on a crisp Saturday morning. Modern fixtures, wide windows, shelves neatly stocked, but the neighborhood character remained. The graffiti-tagged lampposts, the old brick facades of shops nearby, the lingering scent of roasted coffee and fresh bread drifting from a corner cafe. Gone was the bulletproof partition. The protection Vincenzo offered was invisible but absolute, present in ways she didn't have to see to feel. Opening day drew a crowd larger than she expected. Neighbors, old customers who had followed her from South Street, even a few local journalists eager to document the revival. She moved behind the counter, exhausted but triumphant, greeting everyone with polite smiles and genuine warmth. Across the street, Vincenzo watched. He didn't enter, didn't hover, he simply observed, giving her space to shine. As the afternoon faded into evening and the crowd thinned, he walked in. Jasmine looked up, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "You came." "I wouldn't miss it," he replied simply. "You could have come in earlier. This is your victory. I'm just here to close up with you." That understanding, his honoring of her independence even in moments of celebration, solidified everything. She felt seen, respected, and unpressured. Later, they returned to the loft. Though she could now afford her own place, she hadn't moved out. Staying was different from necessity, it was choice. It was autonomy aligned with desire. In bed, she traced the faint scar through his left eyebrow. "Tell me how you got this," she asked carefully. It was a test. Would he shield her from the reality of his world, or lay it bare? "My uncle. I was 17, questioned one of his decisions. He taught me about respect," he said. "Does it still happen?" The violence in your family. Yes. Less than before, but yes. That world doesn't change because I want it to. She hesitated. Do you still kill people? Not in 6 months. Not since you. But I can't promise never again. Logic screamed at her to leave, to step back from this honesty, from this danger. Instead, she whispered, I don't want you to lie to me. Ever. Even if the truth is ugly. I won't, he said. And I need you to know, I'm not staying because I need you. I'm staying because I choose you. His eyes darkened, reflecting emotion she had never witnessed before. That's all I've ever wanted. The epilogue of their story wasn't neat. She ran her store, built her business, maintained her independence. He continued in his world. The compromises, the responsibilities, the potential for violence remained, just as it had for decades. They didn't merge their lives completely, they overlapped them. Friday nights became a ritual. He showed up at closing, same tailored coat, hands in pockets, watching. She teased him without hesitation. You know you look ridiculous in Fishtown dressed like that? His smile was slow, amused. You love it. I tolerate it. Big difference. Neighbors whispered about the man in the black coat who lingered around her store, protective yet unobtrusive. Jasmine didn't explain. She didn't apologize. Their relationship existed in the margins, bridging her legitimate world and his criminal one, a narrow but powerful space they had carved together. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was honest. Two people choosing each other despite every reason not to, despite the danger, despite the complexity. Survival didn't mean surrender, and love didn't need to be flawless. It existed in acknowledgement, in boundaries, in daily acts of decision. Jasmine didn't need saving. She needed witnessing. Someone to see her struggle and respect it, to offer help without demanding surrender. Vincenzo didn't need redemption, he needed acceptance. Someone to recognize his darkness without illusion, and still choose to stay. One evening, on the loft balcony, Philadelphia spread out below them like a living mosaic of brick, steel, and light. The city that had shaped both of them, beautiful, broken, resilient. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. That night. Letting me in? She inhaled, thinking of the fire, the losses, the risks. I regret that my store burned. I regret that people got hurt. But you? Us? No. Even knowing what I am. Especially knowing what you are. Because you never pretended to be anything else. He pulled her close, voice firm, honest. I love you, Jasmine Monroe. It was the first time he had said it. She breathed in, steadying herself. I love you too, Vincenzo Salvatore. God help me, but I do. No God in this, baby. Just choice, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And that was the truth they lived in. Not fate, not divine intervention, but daily, deliberate choice. Choosing to love dangerously, honestly, fiercely. Not happily ever after, but truthfully ever after. The screen of their lives closed on the two of them, silhouetted against the city lights. Two people who had found each other in darkness and had built something real, something human, something theirs. Lessons from their story. Survival isn't surrender. Accepting help strategically doesn't diminish your strength. Boundaries are the foundation of respect. Vincenzo's restraint was more loving than any grand gesture. Moral complexity is human. People are more than their worst choices. Exhaustion and strength coexist. Admitting struggle doesn't make you weak. Wrong choices can feel right. Life isn't a morality play, it's messy and complicated. Proximity breeds understanding. Love grows in daily choices, seeing flaws and choosing anyway. You can't save people, you can only witness them. Jasmine didn't need rescue, she needed respect. This is what happens when two people choose honesty over comfort, when love exists in the margins of impossible worlds. Jasmine and Vincenzo's story reminds us that strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about choosing who you let in, and on what terms. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever made a choice that looked wrong to everyone else but felt right to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us where you're watching from, whether you're in Philadelphia, where this story lives, or anywhere else in the world. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button because we bring powerful, honest stories like this every day. Tomorrow, another story drops you won't want to miss. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions help us continue to share these raw, real stories. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love on your own terms, even when the world says you shouldn't. Until next time, keep choosing yourself first.